Hi everyone, I'm Tabitha Parker and welcome to the AIHM Friday Wellness Webinar. We are very excited to have with us Dr. Amy Sapola today. And I'll just give you, for those of you just joining us for the first time, the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine is a global interprofessional integrative health association working to transform healthcare, body, mind, spirit, community, and planet. And we've really come from two organizations that merged in 2014, the American Holistic Medical Association and the AIHM. And we expanded at that point to really include all professions that are working in the integrative space, holistic medicine, integrative medicine, functional medicine, and with the goal of really bringing us all together to move forward the holistic body, mind, spirit, community, planet philosophy in medicine. So we're really so blessed to have Dr. Sapola with us today. Amy is a clinical pharmacist and certified wellness coach with a BS in nutrition. She's completed a 2-year fellowship with honors in integrative medicine from the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine and is an Institute of Functional Medicine certified practitioner. Both just very rigorous programs, so she's a lifelong learner. As a mother of 2 children, she's an avid gardener, passionate cook, and longtime yogi. She has an integrative approach to health and wellness, both personally and professionally. Her special interests and expertise include food as medicine, avoidance and/or appropriate discontinuation of medications, optimizing hormone balance, fertility, PCOS, balancing blood sugar and type 2 diabetes, intuitive eating and mindfulness, and rational use of vitamins, minerals, herbs, and supplements. And today we have the pleasure that Dr. Sapola will be talking to us about intuitive and functional approaches to nourish our mind, body, and spirit, which we all really need in these days. So Amy, welcome, and I'll pass over the screen to you.
Thank you so much, Tabby. Let me just share my screen here.
And as Amy's doing that, as you come in, please say hello to us in the chat, and you can put questions in the Q&A as we move through the presentation as well.
All right, so thank you so much, Tabby, for the introduction. I'd also like to thank AIHM for inviting me to speak today, and thank you everyone who's watching as well. I continue to be so grateful to have been part of the 2nd cohort for AIHM as part of the fellowship class. So again, it was a wonderful program and such a fantastic experience where I made so many long-lasting friendships and learned so much about integrative medicine, which has really influenced how I practice today. So I host a podcast called Nourish and Shine, and one of the things I always ask on every episode is, what does the word nourish mean to you? And I'd love for you to think about that for a second. The definition of nourish is to provide with food or other substances necessary for growth, health, and good condition. But to me, I think nourishing is really about deeply fulfilling your needs, and that's mind, body, and spirit. So to be nourished is more than just taking in the right food. You need to be able to actually digest it, absorb it, and assimilate it. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So not only am I talking about how we're nourishing our physical bodies, but how we can nourish our mind and our soul as well. So we like to think a lot about what we feed our physical bodies with nourishing foods, but it's also so important to consider how we're nourishing our minds and spirits. So what thoughts, feelings, and emotions are you taking in, and what are they providing you with as far as nourishment goes? So this is a photo that's shared a lot in functional medicine. So in our US medical system, we often are mopping up the floor or treating the symptoms of a problem without going upstream to actually turn off the faucet first. And turning off the faucet is what we actually call getting at the root cause of the issue. So in functional medicine, it's about turning off the sink before we're working on mopping up the floor. I love this picture. So just like there's not one pill for every ill or one supplement for every symptom, there's rarely one root cause, right? So a tree has multiple roots. One might be bigger than the other, but the multiple roots go out to give it stability. You also have to consider that those tree roots bring in nourishment to all of the branches and the leaves, just like our body is connected. So we're bringing in nourishment to all of the organs, the cells, the tissues. So it's important to pay attention to not only the tree itself, but also to the soil that it's in. So what's the terrain like around the tree? And you can think of this as like the epigenetic factors. A popular saying is that genetics often loads the gun, but environment is what pulls the trigger. So that tree was based on the functional medicine tree. And I just want to point out here the two green arrows, and you'll see the base of the tree as kind of the base of our wellness. Talks about basically the roots. And here you'll notice the first arrow points to mental, emotional, and spiritual influences, genetic predispositions and experiences, attitudes, and beliefs. Again, those are all on the same level of importance, which I think is really neat to point out. Below that are the modifiable lifestyle factors, which we'll dive more into shortly. The functional medicine matrix is something we use a lot as well. And I like to point out at the center is the mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being of the person you're working with. And there's a quote I like from Wendy Coulter, who's the founder of The Practical Path. And she says, every physical issue at its root has a trauma event, which can be manifested in patterns of thought or behavior, whether conscious or unconscious. When energetic imbalance results or reaches a tipping point, illness can manifest. And really what I think this is saying is that our thoughts and our emotions over time can definitely manifest in physical imbalances. So I just like to point that out as part of the importance of mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So next, I like to talk about the modifiable personal lifestyle factors, or what I like to call the non-negotiables. And Andrea Nakayama of the Functional Nutrition Alliance is the one who kind of came up with this term. And she shares it when she talks about the importance of sleeping, pooping, and blood sugar balance. And I think all of those things really fit into these modifiable personal lifestyle factors. But this is what is so important about addressing these things before you really move forward with a lot of other treatment. So she kind of coined the term of clearing the muddy waters so that you can actually find the roots and see what issues are going on. So again, by addressing these things first as kind of the primary treatment, you can clear the muddy waters and kind of see more clearly where the treatment should go. So I see these interventions as building a strong base so that patients or clients can be set up for long-term success. I think we really need to dive into each of these areas. And if you of these areas, if you say, how are you doing? Or how is your nutrition or your stress? If they're saying fine, meh, terrible, horrible, these are issues that we really, really need to dive into and explore. So my goal is to help people out of being just fine or truly, or kind of meh, blah, into truly being able to express an improvement and satisfaction with each of these lifestyle areas. So you'll often notice if you can gain traction and make strides in one area, the other areas will improve as well. So as you guys probably already know, mindset and digestion really goes together. Stress and anxiety can have a big impact on our digestion. And especially right now with COVID-19, we're experiencing a historic wave of mental health problems, including depression, substance abuse, post-traumatic stress disorder, and suicide. Nearly half of Americans polled reported that the coronavirus is harming their mental health. And that was according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. So it comes down to really the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic nervous system. And you guys might know this more familiar or be more familiar with the terms with parasympathetic as the rest and digest, and the sympathetic nervous system as fight or flight. So if we are in the fight or flight state, we really are not able to rest and digest, right? And our minds are still in that kind of sympathetic state where you might be running from a tiger to save your life, or you might just be thinking about something that happened that made you unhappy or stressful. Our bodies respond in a similar way by releasing cortisol. So cortisol is essentially nature's alarm system. It tells our body to shunt blood away from the digestive tract. Again, not good for digestion. Increasing blood glucose to give our muscle cells more energy. And it also decreases your insulin production to prevent your glucose from being stored so that it's available for your muscles. But when your cortisol is remaining high over time, so you're having continued stress, like in the case of COVID or other things, that can be basically cause your body to remain in kind of this starved state. So you'll have high blood sugar plus low insulin. So your cells are essentially starved for energy because the glucose that's there isn't necessarily getting in. You'll then experience hunger signals sometimes to the brain, in which you'll experience more food cravings. Another issue with chronic stress is that it can cause problems with reproduction. So Tina Cooper-Smith was in my cohort for the fellowship and recently on my podcast as well. And she talked about parasympathetic as rest, digest, and reproduce. And I really like that saying. So, for reproductive health, you have to feel safe and calm and not in this fight or flight state. The other problem with being in that sympathetic state is that it can chronically, it can reduce inflammation short term, but then it also is going to suppress the immune system. So you can experience more colds, more food allergies, and more GI issues because the GI system and your immune system are really interrelated. Also, having high cortisol and high stress can increase your blood pressure and cause dysregulation of your sleep-wake cycle. So you can have more trouble sleeping, which again just feeds into the cycle. So next I'm going to go through the 10 principles of intuitive eating. These were created by two dietitians, Evelyn and Elise. These 10 principles that I'm about to go through come from their work, and you can find them on intuitiveeating.org, which I think is a wonderful resource. So I believe that by practicing intuitive and mindful eating, it can be particularly helpful during this era of increased stress and anxiety. And that's why I felt it was so important to share with you today. So first, I just want to kind of go through what intuitive versus mindful eating is, because sometimes we use the terms interchangeably. So mindful eating is about really being present and mindful in the moment. So being there for the experience of eating and noticing kind of what you're eating and how it tastes and how it looks, and not judging it. Intuitive eating is about rejecting the diet culture and listening to your body and its cravings and desires and so on. So we'll go through the 10 principles. The first one is rejecting the diet mentality. So this one's pretty hard, especially in our popular culture, but letting go of the hope that a new diet or better food plan might just be lurking around the corner, and it's up to us to find it and, just continually trying new things. Diets do not work, and there's plenty of statistics to prove that. This one is pretty striking. So 95% of all dieters regain their lost weight in 1 to 5 years. Diets are often associated with restriction, guilt, and deprivation, which is not at all conducive to making long-lasting lifestyle change that supports wellness and vitality. The second one is honoring your hunger. And I like the saying, hunger is not a 4-letter word. Oftentimes we treat it as a bad thing. Like if we're hungry, that's a problem, right? But it's your body's cue, and we need to get back in touch with what our bodies are telling us. So honoring your biological hunger signals helps you build trust in yourself and in the food that you're eating. So listening to your cravings. One of the keys here is also to eat an adequate amount so that you're not binging because you've deprived yourself for so long. I really like this hunger and fullness scale. So most often we just kind of start eating without thinking about it, right? And so part of bringing a mindful or intuitive approach to eating is checking in with yourself before you start eating. Like, where are you on the scale? And there's no judgment there. It's just kind of nice to know, like, how hungry am I? And then maybe checking in at the end, like, am I still hungry? Am I not hungry? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. The third principle is to make peace with food. So really giving yourself unconditional permission to eat. Telling yourself you shouldn't or should have a certain food can build, again, feelings of deprivation. And it results often in giving in, binge eating, cravings, and on and on. There's also a phenomenon called the Last Supper overeating. So oftentimes before we're going on a new diet or lifestyle plan, we might try to eat as much as whatever it is we love that we're giving up, before we have to give it up. So that too is really not conducive, again, to long lasting change. There's also a lot of guilt around, deprivation and kind of feeling like we have to give it up. And if we have whatever it is we're trying not to have, we can feel very guilty about it. The next one is one of my favorites. So challenging the food police. In our culture, we're definitely conditioned to feel like we're good or bad based on our food choices. So for example, the food police enforce the unreasonable rules that diet culture creates. So examples would be like, a dessert is a reward for being good, or it might be something to feel bad about. And these are the things that we need to let go. What you eat does not make you a good person or a bad person. And again, we need to let go of that guilt. Discovering the satisfaction factor is next. And this is one that we often don't talk about a lot, is really deriving pleasure from what we're eating. When's the last time that you truly felt pleasure from what you were eating? Oftentimes we're thinking more about like the macros, right? Like how many carbs or how many calories or whatever does this have, instead of thinking about how much pleasure we're getting from what we're eating. When you eat what you're really wanting in an environment that's inviting and pleasurable, you often experience greater satisfaction and contentment after eating. I like to think about even like setting the mood for eating, right? So you can use music or like choose a setting that's nice and calm. So going outside or maybe turning off the TV, using nice dishes. Those can all be great ways to really make your meal more satisfying. So next is feeling your fullness. And I kind of referred to this earlier, but pausing in the middle of your meal and just asking yourself, how's the food tasting? What's your current level of hunger? And when you check in, actually trust yourself. You don't have to judge or say, oh, that can't be true. Just really learn to trust yourself. As you practice this, you'll likely begin to more easily notice the signals that your body provides you, and they'll let you know when you're comfortably full. This is also something or a place where we can let go of the need to like clean our plate. And that's something we're often taught, is to clean our plate. So you feel your fullness, trust it, and accept that. So here's just a couple mindful eating tips that I like. So just reflecting where you are before you begin. So have you had a stressful day? Are you feeling sad, hungry, bored? Just kind of checking in with yourself. Then avoiding distractions. And this is one I see all the time, and I'm guilty of myself, is maybe scrolling on your phone through social media or answering emails or doing that working lunch. But really focusing in on what you're eating can have a very different effect on how the food is digested. Also sitting down, so don't eat while standing or driving or doing other things, even though driving, sitting down, but sit down and actually prepare for the meal and focus on the meal that you're about to eat. Also, putting down your utensils occasionally. I think most of us have probably had that experience of sitting down to eat and you finish eating and you're like, did I just eat? Like you weren't necessarily present in the eating experience because maybe you were distracted by something else. But just taking that time to pause can really be impactful to how you experience the food that you're eating. The next one is sometimes pretty difficult, but coping with your emotions with kindness. So often it's important to find kind ways to comfort, nurture, and distract ourselves to remove or resolve those difficult emotions, because we know that food won't fix feelings. So discomfort, you may use food like to comfort yourself or distract or numb, and that's okay, but it's just important to recognize when possible that you're doing that and to deal with the source or the root cause of the emotions. Also, to respect your body. All bodies deserve dignity. So respecting your body can help you feel better about who you truly are without unrealistic expectations. The next one I love, and it's movement and feeling the difference. So if you are moving for the, exercising because you're there to burn calories and only worried about how many calories you're burning, you are not probably enjoying it nearly as much as if you're doing something you love. So for example, one of the things I've been doing lately is called Daybreaker. And on Saturday mornings, they have like an online dance party basically. And they play music and everybody dances on Zoom. And it's just really fun. And you can choose to have your video on or not. But being part of like a group and dancing is really fun and kind of lets you relax a little bit. I also love going to like vinyasa flow yoga classes. So just finding what you enjoy that involves movement in a way that feels good to your body. Often we focus so much on, like the calories and not enough on just finding joy in what we're doing. And finding that joy helps you really get out of your head. So again, becoming present in the moment. And then finally, making food choices that honor your health and taste buds while making you feel good. So honoring your health with gentle nutrition. I love this quote, and it's what you eat consistently over time is what matters. It's progress, not perfection. Because often we act as if we're only one bite away from a chronic condition, and we have really become a nation of guilty eaters. So remember that you don't have to eat perfectly to be healthy. You'll not suddenly get a nutrient deficiency or become unhealthy from one snack, one meal, or one day of eating. It's what you eat consistently over time that matters. And that's really key. So, often the news headlines can be really confusing, and there's a lot of food phobia out there. Popular culture tends to teach us that food will kill us, cure you, or make you fat. And it really distorts our relationship with food. So what about if food actually nourished us, right? So I think it's important that we acknowledge that if we're constantly under the impression that there's a magical pill or food around the corner, it distracts us from the importance of listening to our bodies and building the trust with ourselves that we're the best judge of what nourishes our body. And again, important to remember too, that the science of nutrition is regularly changing. So really, is there a perfect way to eat? Probably not. So this quote's from Michael Pollan, who I love. Eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. And the next quote is from Evelyn Elise from Mindful Eating, which kind of is a play on the first quote. Enjoy eating food, not too much, not too little, mostly what satisfies you. I think talking on this topic as well, it's really important to bring up the term orthorexia. So this is an unhealthy obsession with healthy eating, which we actually have been seeing more and more of. It's often being on severely restricted diets, which here are some of the signs and symptoms. And I'll tell you, as someone who really is a healthy eater, a lot of these things I probably do myself. But again, it's really becoming quite obsessed with these large like groups of food, but I think it's a condition to be aware of and to watch out for. So let's talk about the joy of cooking. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, other than gardening, and that's next. So another Michael Pollan quote is, "Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself." And I love that. I think, you know, cooking does save money. You can cook exactly what your body's craving and just the way you like it. It also reduces waste. It benefits your entire family, and you can be creative and express yourself. This next picture is just for a smile break. These are my kids. It's never too early to start teaching your kids how to cook, and kids really enjoy being part of the cooking experience. So the benefits of eating seasonally and locally are really foods fresher, tastier, and more nutritious. It often travels less distance, and you can get it at its peak ripeness then. So it's going to taste better and more flavorful. I like this quote, when fruits and vegetables contain more nutrients when allowed to ripen naturally on their parent plant. And that is so true. If you've ever gardened or maybe had a parent or relative who gardened, when you pick like an apple off a tree or a plum off a tree and taste it, it tastes way different than what's in the store. A couple really good resources for this are below here. Eating on the Wild Side is a great book by Joe Robinson, which really gets deep into the benefits of eating kind of local fresh food. So the benefits of gardening, this is like my favorite topic ever. Basically, this can help you eat more fruits and vegetables. The fruits and vegetables that you're growing are full of vibrant life energy, vitamins, minerals, and again, like I talked about in the last slide, they're fresher and more alive. So you have control over how your food's grown too. So you can grow organically, you cannot use as many fertilizers or pesticides as conventionally raised produce. Also, you gain a deeper connection with your food and nature and the earth. And we all know that time in nature can definitely be healing and quite relaxing. So this is my garden, mine and my family's. So I originally started off obviously with a much smaller garden and not at all as a very good gardener. My husband used to call me Johnny Appleseed because I would plant a little bit of everything and, you know, kind of hope for the best. So I had many fails before I really got into gardening. Now I'm a master gardener intern and really just loving it. So one of the things that I really love about gardening, like I mentioned before, is knowing exactly where my food's coming from and how it's raised. I also love trying to find like unusual varieties or things that are unique or different, which you wouldn't find in the grocery store. So a couple of things I grow are like goji berries or honey berries, different greens. It's just really fun. Every year I try to find something new. Also, teaching our kids to garden is a fundamental skill. So it's amazing how kids will try anything when they tend to pick it themselves. There's also so much vibrant life energy in the produce. It's just undeniable when you look at it, how beautiful fresh produce is. I also precept students here at the hospital, and as part of that, I take the students with me down to our local community garden, and in our community, it's a really neat setup. We have a community garden where people garden the plots, and then they donate everything on those plots to our local food shelf, and our food shelf is here at the hospital. So I have been bringing our students down every week. They harvest produce down there, and then we bring it back to the hospital. I'll show you a couple more pictures here. So here our students are picking green beans, and these were actually all different colored beans. And then here's us just standing and showing some of the stuff we picked that day. But basically, our students are learning not only about you know, being a pharmacist or being a physician. I have medical students and pharmacy students here in this picture, but they're learning about the social determinants of health and fair and equal access to fruits and vegetables. And I think being in the soil and actually going through the process of picking those fruits and vegetables really teaches students so much. And many of the students I've taught have said this is their first experience with gardening. They've never had anything like fresh out of the ground. So it's really fun for me as well. This is another picture. Our students then bring the produce back and they'll often wash it or clean it so that it's ready for our food shelf. So they use our hospital kitchen. This is our hospital garden. We got this grant about 3 years ago now, I think. In order to help reduce sodium consumption in our hospital, we decided to grow herbs. So we've been growing herbs and it's expanded each year. So we added 2 more garden beds and now we grow lots of different varieties of lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers. So we're filling our salad bar. We are also feeding it to our long-term care residents and assisted living, our patients in the hospital, as well as our cafe. So it's a really neat way, again, to provide that additional benefit of having fresh produce right here at the hospital. So here's just another picture of our gardens. And this is a picture of our fresh lettuce. Again, you can just see the difference. It's not like the salad in a bag, right? So when you cut this fresh lettuce, it's so delicious. And we're often picking it that day or just the day prior before it's served. This is another opportunity to garden. And again, I think you can't teach children young enough to start gardening and cooking. So this is at our local school. Myself and one of our students went out and we just worked with the preschool kindergarten class during summer school to plant vegetables, and then we did crafts and where they would like make spiralized noodles or different things so that they could try some of the vegetables we grew. And then we read books about gardening and plants. So again, teaching children young to appreciate produce and, you know, eat fruits and vegetables is really an awesome life skill. So here's just another little picture of us at the school. So next, let's talk about equipping our bodies to receive nutrients. So we really talked about, you know, the basics of kind of the relationship with food, but also when we think about nutrition specifically, it's important to understand that our bodies must be ready and able to optimally accept the nutrients that we're going to take in. And I think that mindful and intuitive eating is a great start. And next, we'll talk about how food and digestion are also a big part of that. So functional foods and phytochemicals or phytonutrients are often talked about. And phytonutrients are compounds that form the plant's immune system, which I think is really cool. There's thousands of phytonutrients out there, including major groups like carotenoids, flavonoids, ligands, curcuminoids, and so much more. I'd like to point out the excerpt on the right, often we're really drawn to the latest single compound sold as a supplement in like a highly concentrated form. But we really neglect to consider that the complex interaction and interconnection and the function of the various components of a plant and how they likely work together as part of the whole. So again, like considering the innate wisdom of the plant versus just isolating one ingredient. So a good example of this is curcumin versus turmeric. So next, I like to talk about eating the rainbow. Only 9% and 12% of American adults meet the requirements for vegetables and fruits, respectively. And 8 out of 10 Americans fall short in every color of phytonutrients. So this is called the phytonutrient gap, right? So diets basically higher in phytochemicals can help offset pollutant toxicity and again, help protect our genes from environmental triggers. So here, I love this picture. There's so much variety and we tend to get kind of stuck in one category or like maybe we eat from a couple, but it's really neat to consider how each day you could incorporate each of these categories. So eating fruits and vegetables was shown to have a favorable impact on psychological well-being. And this was actually studied in 13,000 Australians over 2 years. So simply eating fruits and vegetables can have a favorable impact on your psychological well-being. I think that's pretty huge. Also, increased fruits and vegetable intake, up to 8 portions a day, was positively associated with happiness, life satisfaction, and well-being. Improvements that they saw were actually equal to going from unemployed to employed in happiness. So I also like to refer to the work of Deanna Minnick here. She is amazing. And if you have time, definitely check out her work online. But she brings together the food colors and how they tie into like functions in the body. So she talks about orange and reproduction, red foods and how they help with inflammation, yellow foods helping with digestion, green foods helping with cardiovascular health, and blue and purple helping with cognition. And the blue and purple category is one of the harder categories for people to get typically. So this next picture is just one of the things I made. It's important to consider, though, the nutrient diversity and nutrient density. So too often we're purely focused on calories or macros, but thinking about the color and, again, the nutrient diversity and density. So as many of us may know, the plant diversity in the world is really diminishing. So ancient diets had 3,000 or more different species compared to our modern day diet with about 400 species of fruits and vegetables or plants which are eaten, and actually about 100 or less are usually found in the grocery store. So when you think about the grocery store and the varieties available, think about how you might be able to incorporate other new things or try something new just to, again, bring in some more phytonutrients. So I'd also like to talk about 3 mindful practices to improve digestion. So before we eat, really taking that time to maybe first think of 3 things that you're grateful for. And gratitude is a really powerful practice and can shift us from that sympathetic state into a parasympathetic state. So thinking again of your day, maybe even just 3 good things that happened that day. Also taking 3 deep breaths is another option. So breathing in and out, just feeling your chest or your abdomen rise and fall 3 times and finding yourself more calm, more in the moment. You can also say a mantra, something like breathing in calm, releasing stress, breathing in peace, releasing worry, breathing in love, releasing tension. The third practice is about mindful awareness of the food. So noticing like the color, the smell, looking at it, thinking about the texture, the temperature, all of those things. And one of the things I like that one of my friends who's a yoga teacher, Susie Valek, says when we're in our final resting pose is there anything you could do to make your body just 5 to 10% more comfortable? And I like to think about that during this step of mindful awareness, where when you're sitting there and noticing the food, is there anything you could do to make your experience of eating just 5 to 10% better? All right, so next let's talk about digestion. So now that we've used the principles of intuitive eating and incorporated vibrant foods and have taken a moment to relax and shift into that parasympathetic state, it's time to start digesting. So when you look at the prevalence of all digestive diseases, it's huge. There's 60 to 70 million people in the US affected by all digestive diseases, which accounts for 48.3 million ambulatory care visits a year, and that was in 2010. Also, gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD, prevalence is really about 20% of the population. So 1 in 5 people are experiencing some reflux. Is really producing amylase, which is the first step of carbohydrate digestion in your mouth. So even just being present and getting ready to eat and producing saliva can help you digest starches better. You then release protease and hydrochloric acid in the stomach, which helps with protein digestion. So if people are on, say, proton pump inhibitors, that may affect how they're able to digest. The other thing I really like to bring up after talking with some functional or biological dentists is the importance of chewing and digestion and oral dental health. If you are not having good contact with your teeth or experiencing pain with chewing, oftentimes people are swallowing food in larger pieces that are hard to digest and can definitely experience digestive problems, being gas, bloating, those sorts of things from not properly chewing their food. So really important to consult a dentist when people find that to be an issue. I also really like to talk about digestive enzymes, bitters, teas, those sorts of things, which might help us to digest a little bit better, or give you just a little extra boost to digestion. So I think digestive enzymes, at least how I recommend them generally, are great if you're having a hard time digesting certain meals or certain nutrients, like if you know that if you have much fat in your meal, you have a hard time breaking it down, those sorts of things. Digestive enzymes can work all right for that. Digestive bitters are great before a meal. They help release hydrochloric acid in the stomach, pancreatic enzymes, and help increase bile production. And after a meal, consuming bitters can also help with indigestion, bloating, gas, and heartburn. So personally, I like Urban Moonshine bitters. That's what I tend to use already prepared, but people can make their own bitters or incorporate bitter foods into your meal. You can also consider teas. So teas are great. Fennel, peppermint, chamomile, all can have different effects as far as digestion goes. When it comes to stress, I like to think about how we can calm ourselves down, again, to digest better. So thinking about adaptogenic teas or mushrooms, adaptogenic herbs, or mushrooms that support your body's natural ability to deal with stress. They're called adaptogens, obviously, because they help the body to adapt to kind of the situation and what it needs. I typically like reishi mushroom tea before bed, or I'll drink like a Tulsi sweet rose tea. I find those both really calming. Other calming teas I like are like lemon balm or chamomile. And lemon balm's actually been, chamomile has been shown to reduce cortisol. You can also cold infuse those teas with similar benefits in the summer if you don't feel like a warm beverage. So as we probably know, stomach acid is necessary to absorb nutrients like iron. So inadequate digestive enzymes can slow digestion and lead to discomfort. So if you are taking certain medications, again, like proton pump inhibitors, you may have, again, difficulty digesting certain foods. Digestion and absorption of nutrients takes place primarily in the stomach and small intestine. The large intestine, or the colon, actually does play some role in digestion of nutrients, but it's more for storage. And after food is passed through the stomach and the small intestine, the majority of the nutrients have already been absorbed, and it leaves a mixture of indigestible carbohydrates and proteins. So sometimes we can have difficulty using some of the nutrients we consume or absorbing them. And absorption is kind of the next key step. So some barriers can be GI conditions in which absorption is obstructed, like celiac disease or irritable bowel disease, also bacterial overgrowth, an imbalanced microbiome, or again, like I mentioned, inadequate digestive enzymes. All right, so what's left when it gets down into the colon is fermented by the bacteria in your gut to produce short-chain fatty acids. These fatty acids are then used for fuel by the cells in your large intestine. and small intestine. So it really helps keep that barrier intact and helps maintain that structural integrity that helps keep us safe and helps keep larger particles from coming through the intestinal wall. So because these short chain fatty acids are the result of indigestible fibers and proteins being fermented by the bacteria in the gut, it's important that we really are getting enough fiber in our food. Fiber is found in plant foods, like most of us know, like fruits, vegetables, beans, legumes, grains, those sorts of things. Bacteria also can play an important role in how we absorb macronutrients. So again, the microbiome is so hot right now and everybody's talking about it. We also have been talking a lot about prebiotics. So how do you support the good bacteria that's there and how do you feed that bacteria? So next is the gut microbiome. What disrupts it, right? So antibiotics are a huge one, food allergens, chronic stress, C-section or preterm birth can disrupt basically the microbiome from the start of the baby. Environmental toxins can be disruptive, as well as use of nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen or naproxen. Also, prolonged use of PPIs, which would be like omeprazole. One of the best ways to heal the gut, though, is to remove those disruptors when possible. You can avoid allergens if possible. And then there is that potential for supportive supplementation, like L-glutamine or probiotics, fiber, DGL, curcumin, those sorts of things. Another way I love to support the healthy gut microbiome is by fermenting foods. So here's a list of multiple different fermented foods that are out there. I think probiotics are fine if you like taking a capsule, no big deal. You know, they're great for acute indications, but how do we really like look at changing the terrain? So by changing our diet and incorporating these fermented foods and healthy bacteria, we can actually change the terrain versus just that acute effect of taking a supplement. So usually just a forkful even of these fermented foods is adequate. You don't have to be eating the whole jar, which is nice. And it's really easy to make at home. So one of my little cheat ways of doing it is if you see these little jars on the screen, I bought silicone airlocks on Amazon, I think, and little glass weights that fit right in the jar. So you don't have to make like a huge batch. You can just ferment veggies in jars right on your countertop. And I'll often add a little bit of a previous like brine or a store-bought brine that has the live and active bacteria already in there. So I'll add like a tablespoon of that to the jar to really get it working. And so far it's been almost fail-proof. So if you want to try it, I definitely recommend it. The other thing is just getting dirty. So again, getting out in the garden and getting in the dirt exposes you to some really great bacteria that helps build your microbiome. You don't need to always peel your vegetables. So you can just rinse them and enjoy them as long as they're grown in a way that's safe and healthy. So another thing I like to talk about is just your gut is so innately tied to all of your other functions. So your brain chemicals, like your neurotransmitters in your gut actually can be like altered by the type of bacteria that you have. So having bacteria in your gut that is good and supportive can actually improve your brain health. And it's also important to point out that over 70% of your immune cells are actually found in your gut. So finally, let's talk about assimilation. So assimilation is the conversion of food into substances of the body. So that's really like the building blocks of the body, right? So what you're taking in, actually being able to use it. So in order to support a healthy liver, it's recommended that you avoid alcohol, avoid overconsumption of food frequently, and to maintain an overall healthy lifestyle. So again, thinking of the modifiable lifestyle factors that we talked about earlier. You also want to be cautious with medications, supplements, toxins, environmental toxins, things like that. One issue that really concerns me is the accumulation of fat in the liver that leads to chronic inflammation and can lead to fibrosis and cirrhosis. So experts are actually predicting that due to this rise in obesity in the United States, the prevalence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is going to also rapidly increase. And in the next 30 years, it's expected to overtake hepatitis C as the leading indication for liver transplant. The microbiome has become so popular, right? Like I mentioned. And I think that the liver is really underappreciated for its hugely important role in assimilation of the nutrients, as well as its role in detoxification. So I absolutely love talking about the liver, but this could be an entirely separate talk. So as a pharmacist, I often think of the liver in terms of metabolism of drugs, vitamins, herbs, nutrients, and how these things interact. But the liver is also really just important when it comes to processing the nutrients from your food to make the building blocks of your body. So what I say is kind of the key takeaway here is that when your digestion's functioning properly, your liver is getting food that's adequately broken down into pieces that are small enough to be absorbed into the bloodstream and not causing it to overwork or over kind of burden it with detoxifying. So keeping your body and your liver healthy helps lead to being able to nourish your body, provide you with energy and maintain the health and function of each and every cell. So I like to ask each of you to consider, how can you love your liver? And by doing so, support assimilation of the beautiful, energy-filled, vibrant foods that you're consuming. So addressing the non-negotiables and considering our relationship with food and ourselves and maintaining the health of the microbiome and liver may prevent unnecessary utilization of prescription medications. And this number has been increasing drastically. So the number of prescriptions filled for American adults and children rose 85% between 1997 and 2016. And during this time, the US population actually only rose 21%. So today, I hope that you'll walk away from this talk thinking about digestion in a different way, considering how important the non-negotiables are, our relationship with food is, and how intuitive eating and mindful eating might be helpful. How finding joy in the diversity of what we eat can help nourish our bodies with the innate wisdom of plants and nutrients, and how supporting our microbiome and our liver can help our bodies to utilize nutrients more effectively. So I wanted to ask again at the end, what does nourish mean to you? And I'd love for you guys to think about that. For me, nourishment is spending time in nature, feeling that connection with the earth and feeling part of something greater than myself. Nourishment is making time for yoga, relaxation, and mindfulness, even if it might involve having a baby strapped to my back. Nourishment also means cooking, which brings me so much joy, and eating nourishing foods. Also, just spending time with the ones I love, laughing, and traveling. And finally, connecting with like-minded individuals. I like to call this group my tribe. We support each other, we have connection, and lots of laughter. And this is our second AIHM cohort. So thank you guys so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I am ready for questions.
That was really great, Amy. I really appreciated your perspective and just helped me to rethink about a whole bunch of different things. So thank you. We have a few questions in the Q&A. One is about the online dance group. If you could post a link, that would be great. People.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, maybe you can send us the link and we can put it in the chat.
That sounds good.
Another question from Lena Bautista: how do you tailor your advice for bulimics or others with eating disorders? In other words, how may you word choices differently, the timing of the advice, etc.? Are there any online resources you refer patients to?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. You know, there are organizations like national organizations for eating disorders, which I will refer patients to. I also have a fellow that was in my cohort that I do refer clients to frequently, who is a therapist who works specifically with eating disorders, and she would probably answer that question way better than me. But I think that it's really using some of those coaching skills too, like the wellness coaching skills and reflective listening, and really trying to be kind of teach kindness with oneself and be present and listen without judgment. And I think intuitive eating is still very appropriate for that group.
Yeah, I really appreciate too, you know, that again, just one of the reasons AIHM was created was really that interprofessional value that we bring. And in areas like this is really finding, like you have, that colleague that you know really does this type of work, and being able to refer and provide resources that way is a wonderful approach.
Yeah.
Another question: do you have any recommendations to help cleanse the liver, kind of keep it healthy?
Yeah, certainly. So just basic things like, you know, not over consuming food in one sitting, avoiding alcohol. Some people will use like milk thistle and various herbal options. But I think sometimes it's just kind of the day-to-day stuff we can do. Organic produce, you know, avoiding toxins in our environment can all be helpful to just continually maintain the health of the liver.
Another question from Lena. I agree that stress affects digestion. How do you recommend people start to get off the fast-moving treadmill of the modern age? My struggle is mostly at work, where my clinic prefers us to see patients every 15 minutes, especially in the era of COVID. Do you have any?
Oh gosh.
This is a big one, right?
Yeah, that's a super big one. I mean, I don't have the answer to that one. I think, you know, sometimes it first starts with ourselves and just finding a way to center and kind of find calm, even amongst the storm, right? So, you know, and then trying to make changes where you can. And it's hard to try to influence a whole system. And, but yeah, I don't probably have the right answer to that one.
I think certainly, I know that, you know, within AIHM, we struggle with this even as a small organization, but one of the things we really do is talk about this in our staff meetings, create space to just bring up the fact that we're struggling with this. And we then kind of give each other tools of ways that we can hold each other accountable. So even in systems, to be able to say that, even if it's with us, you know, a portion of your clinical staff or your closest colleagues that you're literally working with every day next to one another, of like, is there a way we can take this time, you know, find small ways to start implementing it, because then that can start to inform a bigger discussion within your own systems. So just having that courage to start those conversations, even if there's not an answer yet, because this is such a big systemic issue of how do you really create more sustainable, like self-care sustainable systems. And that is not, it's easier said than done, right? But certainly getting those conversations started can help you find allies as well within that process.
And I've heard people like incorporating simple mindfulness techniques into their day, like when they wash their hands, just taking a moment to breathe, you know, between patients, or if you're able to at lunch, like getting outside in nature, or just taking a walk, like stepping away from the computer for a little bit if you're able to. Those sorts of things can at least help kind of recenter yourself, even if you're moving at a fast pace all day.
Great. Well, we do still have more questions, but we are going to have to and we only have a minute left. So I, again, just really encourage you to reach out to Dr. Sapola. We put her website in the chat. And for those of you online or watching us on the live stream on Facebook, her website is www.amysapola, amysapola.com. So we encourage you to reach out to her and look at the resources she has as well. Just to end, I am going to just very quickly give a little recap about what AIHM is doing right now with all of the different situations that we have going on in the world. We have transitioned everything 100% virtual, our annual conference. We highly encourage all of you guys to think about coming. It's going to be a really great online experience this year, and that we're working in some very interactive sessions. So we would love to hear feedback of what you'd like to see during that. All of our fellowship and chapter meetings have all gone virtual, and we are providing free CME through to our members, and doing our wellness webinars and Monday meditations to begin and end each week. We held our first anti-racism forum last weekend, and really it was such an amazing turnout. Many people from the integrative community came to that to really start having a bigger discussion about how we address some of the institutionalized racism issues within our world right now. So we'll be having ongoing discussions about that. We have an AIHM monthly town hall, and that our next one will be in July. And certainly I really encourage you, if you're interested in getting more education, we have an incredible membership organization where you can network and meet other integrative providers. The fellowship is such an incredible program. It's a 2-year online program, and Amy went through it. Many of our members have been through it. We encourage you to look into that. Our next class starts in October. And just keep joining us each week. Give us feedback. All of our sessions are recorded and then put on our website and on our YouTube channel. So if you aren't able to come at this time, you can certainly join us on your own time and still participate. So thank you all so much for coming. Keep the integrative community connected, and let's keep doing the good work we're all doing out there. Thanks again.
Thank you.